Hello and welcome back to Nan Province, Thailand, a mountainous region in the northeast which is home to some of the craziest snakes in the entire world. After finding the vast majority of our daytime targets, we spent the final days of the trip herping primarily at night, usually beginning with road cruising and ending with hiking. Green cat snakes were the most common large snakes seen crossing the roads at night, while the ubiquitous Gunprex pit vipers were as common as always. Tiny neonate Parius Geminatus were as common as they are cute. We seem to be here at the exact right season for babies. Every now and again, a black and white snake would get the heart rate up, but it was usually just these Lycodon chapaensis, some of the best crate mimics around. A rather unexpected yet familiar face lower down on the mountain was this Birdmoor's slug snake. Regular viewers of my channel will know that these are very common in my garden where I live, so seeing one up in the mountains of Nan was quite a surprise, and I must say it did look slightly different to the ones we see in our area, but enough on that for now. Seeing one of these amongst all the Parius Geminatus and Parius macularius we've been seeing was a really pleasant change of pace. Another nice surprise was our second Plagio Forest nachalis of the trip, this time a very beautiful yellow individual. These seem to be primarily active at sunrise and just after sunset, and you can see this one puffing up its neck as opposed to spreading a hood for once. Other than these few species, there really wasn't much active on the roads at night, so we hit the forest on foot in search of new encounters. One of my favourite encounters of the entire trip was this baby Gunprex pit viper, which has literally just caught a Leptobrachella eos. Despite seeing hundreds and hundreds of snakes across this year, feeding observations like this are extremely rare to see and always special. This viper has its fangs deeply embedded in the body of the hapless frog, waiting for it to fully succumb before swallowing it whole. I made sure to get several close-up photos of this awesome encounter before moving on and leaving the snake completely untouched to finish its meal in peace. Also, while hiking alone, I found a lovely pale morph mock viper, which was sleeping on a plant near a stream, as they typically do. During the day, this species can be quite bitey, but at night they are very placid and you can take a proper look at them. They are certainly great viper mimics, although very easy to distinguish as soon as you can recognize this species. I will admit that the first time I ever came to Southeast Asia, the first one of these I saw was crossing the trail very quickly in front of me, and I mistook it for a viper and didn't catch it. This will probably be the last mock viper appearing on my channel for a while, so take a close look before we move on. Undoubtedly the best snake of this night walk was this stunning pale morph of Ophis, with a really unique dorsal pattern to boot. I am a huge fan of Thailand's terrestrial pit vipers, so finding this species always makes me extremely happy, especially when they're so beautiful. This one was just sitting in the open in the middle of the trail, not typical at all. Despite seeing several snakes while walking on the trails, we really weren't seeing anything new or particularly exciting. So we decided to undertake a huge hike to the summit of the mountain to try our luck for very rare species there instead. We had hoped that the dry weather from earlier in the evening would persist, but instead we got rain, fog, and infinity leeches. At this point, I was stopping and observing the different species of leech which were attempting to feast upon my blood. I was particularly impressed by this leech species here with a neon green pattern on its back. Really beautiful, actually. Along with leeches, the rain also brought out more mountain pit vipers, and we were stoked to encounter this hatchling individual while hiking the trail to the summit. Similar to the pale morph individual from earlier in this video, it was just sitting in the open on the trail. This really makes you wonder how many of these we walk past, which are camouflaged within or hidden beneath leaf litter. Just take a look at its size next to my hand. A tiny little chubby pit viper, and extremely cute if you ask me. Similar to my limited encounters in the past, we also found this species to be very docile and show almost no defensive behavior whatsoever, even when touched, poked, prodded, whatever. En route to the top of the mountain, we saw many different reptiles and amphibians. Most sightings were Gunprex pit vipers and the other typical wet weather snake, Parius Geminatus. although this particular individual here signified a personal record for the highest elevation I had ever seen a snake at in Thailand, at exactly 1,940 meters above sea level. Also encountered near the summit was this Leptobrachium huashen, an awesome species of frog which lives high on mountains in the north of Thailand. We found 2 different species of Pseudocalotis, a rarely seen genus of canopy-dwelling agamid lizards inhabiting montane forests. Most common was this rather bland Pseudocalotis microlepis, while at higher elevations we would find these more colourful Pseudocalotis carcianensis, a new species for me at the time. Aside from a couple nondescript frogs, it was difficult for us to turn up herps at the very top of the mountain. Of course, fluorescent green vipers were everywhere and the neon orange slug snakes were too, but we were really looking for something special after hiking so far to get here. But finally, something really special came along in the form of this incredible crocodile salamander. This fascinating group of amphibians dwell in the cloud forests of northern Thailand and can be extremely difficult to find, particularly endemic species like this one here, where you have to hike for many hours to be within their habitat. We knew these existed in the area, but never thought for a second that we would encounter one, especially at a time of year where they are not breeding. Truly one of the most unique amphibians in the entire world, and an amazing experience to find my first ever individual in the wild. I was absolutely enamored by this amphibian. The last interesting reptile of that night was this Phenomorphous Indicus, a species of skink I'd never seen before then. Not really much to say about this one other than the juveniles are very dark in coloration with white spots on the flanks and way too fast to catch. But alas, that was the very last footage I filmed from the Nan expedition, and the next day we packed up and left our village. This was undoubtedly one of our most productive herping trips ever, and there was so much I didn't get to film. I never got to film the Malayan crates we found, Vogel's bronzebacks, or the stunning many-banded green snake which I caught on the second day of the trip. Sometimes I'm just too busy and don't get time. The point of these trips is not filming after all. However, the very next day after this expedition ended, I met up with Cassandra in Nan town and we began our own road trip across northern Thailand and ended up having some of the most insane days of herping of my entire life.
The prophecy has fulfilled itself.
Crap guys, first snake of our trip. Dude, what the hell is this day of herping?